The morning sun rose over the largest children home in the galaxy. Commander Park Daeho stood on the balcony of his office watching thousands of young beings start their day. The facility stretched as far as his eyes could see, covering what used to be 3 entire cities in old Korea. Now it was home to children from 47 different worlds, all living together under human care. Park Daeho had been running this place for 8 years. He remembered when the first alien child arrived, a small blue creature from the Vega system whose parents had died in a mining accident. The Galactic Council had nowhere to send the child because most species could not understand how to care for young beings that were not their own kind. Humans were different, though. They seemed to know exactly what each child needed without being taught. Down in the main playground, a group of human children played with their alien friends. 6-year-old Nari ran around with 3 young Vorthak who looked like walking crystals. Their bodies chimed like music when they moved, and they had taught Nari how to hum along with their natural songs. She was human, but had been abandoned as a baby. The crystal children had adopted her as their sister, and now she could speak their language better than most adults. In the art building, young Ben was finger painting with all 6 of his arms. The small Quellen had purple skin and loved making pictures of his friends. He painted humans and aliens together, showing them playing games and eating meals. The human teacher Kim Sora watched him work and smiled. Ben had arrived 3 years ago after his planet was destroyed by a solar flare. He barely spoke any galactic common language then, but now he chattered constantly. While he painted, the medical center was always busy. Dr. Lee Minju moved from room to room checking on patients. She had learned to treat 17 different types of alien biology. Some children needed special air to breathe, others required different temperatures or types of food. A few could only digest certain minerals. The human doctors had spent years studying each species to make sure every child stayed healthy. Today she was helping a young arachnid who was molting the spider. Like child was scared because shedding her outer shell always hurt. Dr. Lee had developed a special cream that made the process easier. She spoke softly to the frightened child while applying the medicine. The little arachnid had 8 eyes that blinked in sequence when she was happy. In the education center, children learned together regardless of what planet they came from. Teacher Jang Haiyan taught a class of mixed species how to read. He used books with pictures and sounds that worked for different types of senses. Some children saw colors that humans could not, others heard sounds too high or low for human ears. But somehow they all learned together. The Galactic Council had been amazed when they discovered that human teachers could educate alien children as well as their own species. Most civilizations struggle to teach their own young, let alone children from other worlds. Humans seem to understand that all young minds worked in similar ways, even if their bodies were completely different. Captain Cho Minwoo commanded the defense station that orbited above the facility. His job was usually boring. Most of his time was spent helping supply ships dock and making sure deliveries of food and toys reached the children who would attack a place full of children. Even during wars between species, everyone agreed that orphanages were off limits. It was one of the few universal laws that every civilization respected. The defense station had weapons, but they were mainly for show. The real protection came from the fact that the facility housed children from almost every known species. If anyone attacked this place, they would be making enemies of half the galaxy. Parents from dozens of worlds had donated money and supplies to keep the orphanage running. Down in the dining hall, thousands of children ate breakfast together. The kitchen staff had learned to prepare foods that worked for every type of biology. Some children ate plants, others needed raw meat. A few survived on pure energy that was fed to them through special machines. But they all sat together at long tables, talking and laughing in dozens of different languages. Human caretaker Oh Sun-hee helped a group of young ethereals eat their morning energy. The ghost-like children could barely interact with physical matter, but somehow they could touch humans without any problems. The ethereal children floated around her shoulders, chattering in voices that sounded like wind chimes. They had been found drifting in space after their home dimension collapsed. The orphanage had become more than just a place for homeless children. Many of the aliens who grew up there chose to stay on Earth. When they became adults, they became teachers, doctors, engineers, and artists. Earth was slowly becoming the most diverse planet in known space, with beings from hundreds of worlds Living together in Pisa in the engineering section, a teenage mechanoid named Gears worked on building toys for the younger children. His species was naturally good with machines and he loved creating new gadgets. The human supervisor Yun Ji-won had taught him how to make things that were safe for organic children to play with. Gears had been found as a baby robot drifting in a damaged ship. Now he was like a big brother to dozens of younger children. Facility had its own farms where older children learned to grow food. Both human and alien crops grew in massive greenhouses. Some plants needed different soil or atmosphere, but the children had figured out how to make everything work together. A young plantoid named Root had taught the human children how to sing to make vegetables grow faster, while human children showed Root how to use tools to plant seeds. Every evening the children gathered in the Great Hall for story time. Librarian Nam Sujin told tales from every world represented in the orphanage. Human fairy tales mixed with Andromedan myths and Centauri legends the children loved hearing about heroes and adventures from across the galaxy. They often made up new stories combining elements from different cultures. The medical bay also served as a research center. Dr. Lee and her team had made breakthrough discoveries about alien biology. By caring for so many different species, they had developed new medicines and treatments that helped not just the children, but entire civilizations. The Galactic Council had awarded the facility several honors for advancing medical science. As night fell, the children went to their dormitories. Human caretakers like Park Mina helped tuck them into beds designed for every type of physiology. Some children slept in water tanks. Others needed complete darkness. A few required specific sound frequencies to fall asleep, but they were all kept safe and comfortable by humans who had learned to understand their needs. Commander Park Dae-ho walked through the quiet halls checking on the sleeping children. The night shift caretakers nodded to him as he passed. They would watch over the children until morning, making sure everyone was safe and healthy. Tomorrow would bring another day of learning, playing, and growing together. This was what Earth had become in the 15 years since joining the Galactic Council, the unofficial orphanage of the galaxy, a place where any child could find safety and love regardless of what species they belonged to. The humans who ran it did not see it as charity or duty. They genuinely loved these children and considered them family. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Most species barely tolerated children from other worlds. Humans embraced them completely. They studied alien biology to keep them healthy, learned alien languages to talk with them, and adapted their entire society to make room for beings from across the stars. Nobody could have predicted that this sanctuary of peace and love would soon become the target of an attack that would change the galaxy forever. The children slept peacefully under human protection, having no idea that their safety was about to be shattered by beings who saw their diversity as weakness rather than strength. The Hegemony War Council met in the darkness of space aboard their flagship. The 7 species that made up this alliance had conquered dozens of worlds through pure military might. They believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. Weakness deserved to be crushed, and eliminated leader Vex stood before the holographic display showing Earth and its orbital facilities. His 4 arms gestured at the images of human children playing with alien youngsters. The sight disgusted him. Here was everything wrong with the current galaxy. Soft, weak humans pretending that caring for other species' offspring made them important. The hegemony had been watching Earth for months. They saw how other species praised the humans for their compassion. They heard the speeches in the Galactic Council about Earth being a shining example of cooperation. The Warrior Alliance was tired of hearing about human kindness when they knew that only strength mattered. Vex turned to his generals. Each one represented a different species in the alliance. The Krillian had razor-sharp claws and lived for battle. The Vorthok were massive beings with thick armor plating. The Zephyrians could fly and strike from above. The other species were equally deadly in their own ways. Together, they had planned an attack that would send a message to the entire galaxy. The hegemony would show everyone what happened to those who chose weakness over strength. The human orphanage was the perfect target. It represented everything they hated about the current state of galactic civilization. The attack fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 40 destroyer-class ships. Each vessel was armed with weapons designed to destroy military targets. But today they would be used against a facility full of children. The hegemony commanders had no problem with this. They saw it as necessary to prove their point. Captain Cho Minwoo was drinking coffee in his command center when the sensors detected the incoming fleet. He stared at the readings in confusion. Why would so many warships approach Earth? The facility below had no military value and was protected by galactic law. He tried to contact the approaching ships using standard diplomatic channels. The response came as a barrage of plasma fire that destroyed his communication array. Minwoo realized with horror that these ships were attacking his defense station. Began raising shields, but it was too late. The orbital platform exploded in a ball of fire visible from the surface below. Captain Minwoo died instantly along with his crew of 200. The debris from the station rained down on the orphanage like burning stars. The children on the playground looked up in wonder, thinking it was some kind of light show. Commander Park Dae-ho was in his office when the first explosions shook the building. He ran to the window and saw the burning wreckage falling from the sky. His face went pale as he understood what was happening. Someone was attacking the orphanage. This was impossible. Who would do such a thing? The hegemony ships moved into position around Earth, their weapons locked onto the massive facility below. The first bombardment was designed to destroy the outer buildings and cause maximum panic. Energy beams and plasma bolts rained down on the peaceful complex in the eastern playground. Young Bin was showing his latest painting to his friends, the Six-Armed. Quellen had drawn a picture of all the species living together in harmony. He was explaining the meaning of each color. When the first shell landed, the explosion vaporized him instantly, along with 30 other children and their human caretaker. Jang Hyendrili Minju was in the medical center treating a young arachnid when the building shook violently. She grabbed her patient and tried to run for the emergency shelter. The second wave of bombing hit the medical wing. The roof collapsed, burying both doctor and patient under tons of concrete and steel. The human caretakers acted quickly to save as many children as possible. Kim Sora herded a group of young ethereals toward the underground bunkers. The ghost-like children were crying in voices that sounded like breaking glass. They could not understand why anyone would want to hurt them. Park Dae-ho activated the emergency broadcast system. His voice echoed through every speaker in the facility. He ordered all children and staff to move to the reinforced shelters immediately. The human caretakers began the evacuation procedures they had practiced but never expected to use. The hegemony ships had advanced scanners that could detect life signs through rock and metal. They systematically targeted every bunker and safe room. Their weapons were designed to penetrate deep underground. The children huddled in the shelters, thinking they were safe, but the walls could not protect them. Young Nari ran with her crystal siblings toward the main shelter. The Vorthic children chimed in terror as explosions echoed around them. She held their hands, trying to comfort them, even though she was just as scared. The building shook and dust fell from the ceiling. Sunhee was helping a group of mechanoid children when the blast doors sealed. She tried to keep them calm by singing human lullabies. The young robots hummed along, trying to match her melody. They did not understand why the facility was shaking or why the human caretakers looked so frightened. The bombardment continued for 6 hours. The hegemony fleet took turns firing to keep their weapons from overheating. They wanted to make sure every building was completely destroyed, every life sign eliminated. This was not just an attack, it was total annihilation. In the Great Hall, where children had gathered for story time just hours before Nam Soo-jin died protecting a group of youngsters from falling debris, she covered them with her body. When the ceiling came down, her last act was to shield alien children who had trusted humans to keep them safe. The kitchen staff tried to evacuate through the service tunnels, but the hegemony scanners found them. The energy weapons turned the underground passages into furnaces. The human cooks and their young helpers were killed instantly as superheated plasma filled the confined spaces. Yoon Ji-won was in the engineering section when the attack began. He managed to get some of the older children into a reinforced workshop. The teenage mechanoid named Gears used his tools to try to strengthen the walls, but even his mechanical strength could not stop the bombardment from above. The farms and greenhouses burned as incendiary weapons set fire to everything that could burn. The young plantoid named Root tried to save his favorite flowers, but the flames consumed everything he had worked to grow. The human children, who had learned to sing to plants, died alongside their alien friend. As the hours passed, the beautiful facility that had been home to thousands of children became a field of burning rubble. The hegemony ships methodically destroyed every structure, every shelter, every possible hiding place. They wanted to make sure their message was perfectly clear. Commander Park Dae-ho made his last radio transmission. From the main command bunker, he sent out a distress call to all human colonies and military bases. His voice was steady despite the explosions shaking the walls around him. He wanted the galaxy to know what had happened here. The bombardment finally stopped when the hegemony scanners detected no more life signs. The 12-hour attack had reduced the largest orphanage in the galaxy to smoking ruins. The ships began to withdraw, their mission complete. They had shown the galaxy what happened. To those who chose weakness, rescue ships from nearby human colonies arrived 3 hours later. They found a landscape of destruction that shocked even veteran soldiers. The facility that had housed 3,000 children was gone. Only smoking craters and scattered debris remained. The rescue teams worked frantically to search for survivors. They found fewer than 200 children still alive, most of them badly injured. Many had lost limbs or been burned by the energy weapons. The human caretakers who had died protecting them lay scattered among the ruins. Young Nari was found in the main shelter, clutching the shattered remains of her Vorthok siblings. The crystal children had tried to shield her with their bodies, but the plasma fire had melted them into glass fragments. She was unconscious and barely breathing. The medical teams that arrived could not believe what they saw. Children from dozens of species lay dead or dying. The human doctors and nurses who had cared for them had given their lives trying to save them. This was not war, this was butchery of the innocent. News of the attack spread across human space within hours. The images were broadcast on every network showing the galaxy what the hegemony had done. The sight of dead alien children mixed with their human protectors created a reaction that surprised everyone. The Galactic Council issued statements of shock and condemnation. They called for investigations and demanded that the hegemony explain their actions. They threatened sanctions and diplomatic consequences. They did exactly what they always did when faced with violence, but something was different about the human response. The rescue teams working in the ruins were not just sad or angry, they were quiet in a way that made other species nervous. The humans had a look in their eyes that no one had seen before the attack on Earth. Orphanage had crossed a line that the galaxy did not know existed. The hegemony thought they were teaching a lesson about strength and weakness. They had no idea they had just awakened something in humanity that would change everything forever. Admiral Won Tae-jun stood in the ruins of the orphanage main hall where children had gathered for story time just days before. His boots crunched on broken glass and debris as he walked among the scattered toys and books. The smell of smoke still hung in the air, mixed with something else that made his jaw clench in barely controlled rage. Behind him walked the leaders of every human colony and military base in known space. They had come to see the devastation with their own eyes. The images broadcast across human space had been horrific, but seeing the actual destruction was something completely different. This was not just an attack on Earth, this was an attack on everything humanity stood for. Dae-jun had been a soldier for 30 years. He had seen battles and death and destruction, but this was different. These were not soldiers who had died here. These were children who had trusted humans to protect them. They had been murdered while playing and learning and dreaming of their futures. The rescue teams were still pulling bodies from the rubble. Each time they found another small form, the humans watching became a little quieter, a little more dangerous. The alien survivors who could still speak told the same story. The hegemony ships had targeted the children deliberately. They had used scanners to hunt down every hiding place. General Yoon Song-yi knelt beside a crater where the eastern playground had been. She picked up a piece of colored paper that had somehow survived the bombardment. It was part of Bin's painting showing human and alien children playing together. The six-armed Quellan had spent hours working on this picture of friendship and hope. The Galactic Council ambassadors arrived expecting to find humans who were sad and angry. They were prepared to offer comfort and support. They wanted to help humanity grieve and then move forward with diplomatic solutions. What they found instead made them deeply uncomfortable. The humans were not crying or shouting or demanding justice. They were completely silent as they walked through the ruins. They examined every piece of evidence with the careful attention of people preparing for something terrible. Their eyes held a coldness that the alien diplomats had never seen before. Ambassador Keth of the Centauri Alliance tried to speak with Admiral Wantejun about peace negotiations. The human officer listened politely as the alien explained how the Galactic Council would handle the situation. There would be investigations and hearings and eventual sanctions against the hegemony. Wantejun waited until the ambassador finished speaking. Then he pointed to a small hand sticking out from under a collapsed wall. The hand belonged to a young ethereal who had died trying to reach safety. The admiral spoke in a voice that was calm and terrifying at the same time. The human explained that the Galactic Council had 24 hours to remove all their personnel from human space. After that, any non-human ship approaching Earth or human colonies would be destroyed without warning. The time for talking and investigating was over. Humanity was going to war. The alien ambassadors tried to protest. They explained that civilized species did not resort to total warfare over single incidents. They offered mediation services and peace talks. They promised that the hegemony would face consequences through proper diplomatic channels. General Yoon Sung-yi stood up from the crater. Holding the piece of Bin's artwork, she looked at the alien diplomats with eyes that seemed to see right through them. She explained something that would change galactic civilization forever. The concept of total war. Other species fought limited conflicts over territory or resources. They followed rules about which targets were acceptable and which were forbidden. They believed that some things should remain untouched even during warfare. But humans had learned something different during their violent history. When someone crosses certain lines, there are no rules anymore. When an enemy targets your children, every single thing you possess becomes a weapon to be used against them. Your entire civilization becomes dedicated to their complete destruction. There are no neutral parties, no safe zones, no mercy. The human military commanders began issuing orders that shocked the galaxy. Every human colony received the same message: prepare for total war. Every factory that made civilian goods was to be converted to weapons production. Every scientist was to focus on military research. Every ship was to be armed for combat. The Galactic Council tried to intervene. They sent more ambassadors offering to broker peace talks between humanity and the hegemony. They promised swift justice through the proper legal channels. They could not understand why humans would not accept diplomatic solutions. President Nam Chaiwan addressed the galaxy from the rebuilt command center at the Orphanage site. She stood before cameras with the smoking ruins visible behind her. Her voice was steady, but her words carried a promise that made entire star systems reconsider their alliances. She explained that humanity had tried the galactic way of doing things. For 15 years, they had followed the rules and trusted in diplomatic solutions. They had believed that caring for other species' children would earn them respect and protection. The burning playground behind her showed how well that had worked. Human president announced that Earth was withdrawing from all galactic treaties and agreements. The time for being civilized members of the galactic community was over. From now on, humanity would protect its own interests using methods that other species might find disturbing. Across human space, civilians began volunteering for military service in numbers that overwhelmed recruitment centers. Grandmothers who had never held weapons demanded to be trained for combat. Teenagers lied about their ages to join the fight. Children as young as 12 asked how they could help win the war. The humans began converting their entire civilization for warfare. Toy factories started producing ammunition. Medical research centers focused on developing biological weapons specifically designed to kill each hegemony species. Civilian transport ships were fitted with military-grade weapons and armor. Dr. Shin Yujin had taken over the medical program after Dr. Lee Minju died in the attack. She worked day and night studying the biology of the 7 hegemony species. Her goal was not to heal them, but to find the most efficient ways to kill them. Her research teams included alien scientists who had lost children in the attack. The orbital shipyards around Earth began producing warships at a rate that astounded the galaxy. Humans had been building mostly civilian vessels since joining the Galactic Council. Now they revealed manufacturing capabilities that no one had suspected they could produce. Military hardware faster than entire Star Nation's Captain Kim Ji-won commanded one of the new attack fleets being assembled around Mars, his ships were armed with weapons that the Galactic Council had never seen before. Humanity had been secretly developing advanced military technology while publicly focusing on peaceful cooperation. The human war machine grew larger. Everyday colonies that had been focused on farming or mining or research suddenly became military production centers. Every human settlement became a fortress capable of defending itself or launching attacks against enemy targets. Other species watched in growing alarm as humanity demonstrated capabilities that had been completely hidden. The peaceful farmers and teachers and doctors who ran the orphanage had been supported by a military industrial complex that rivaled anything in the galaxy. The hegemony tried to gather intelligence about human military strength. Their spies reported numbers that seemed impossible. Thousands of warships appearing from nowhere, weapons that could destroy entire fleets, manufacturing centers that could replace losses faster than they could be inflicted. Leader Vex received reports from his intelligence network that made him question the wisdom of attacking Earth. The humans were not preparing for a limited military response. They were mobilizing their entire civilization for a war of extermination. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The human transformation from peaceful caregivers to total war footing took less than 30 days. Every aspect of their society was reorganized around the single goal of destroying the hegemony completely. No resources would be wasted on anything that did not contribute to victory. General Ogium briefed the assembled human military leaders on the war plan. It was simple and terrifying. The hegemony would be hunted down across every star system they had ever visited. Every ship, every base, every colony would be destroyed. Every leader would be captured or killed. The humans had decided that the hegemony had forfeited their right to exist when they murdered children. The Seven Species Alliance would be scattered to the winds, their military completely eliminated, their political structure destroyed forever. This was not conquest, this was extermination. As the human war fleets prepared to launch, the galaxy began to understand that they had seriously misjudged the species they thought they knew. The caring teachers and doctors who had run the orphanage were supported by a civilization capable of violence on a scale that defied imagination. The aliens who had praised human compassion were about to witness human wrath. The species that had seemed so gentle and peaceful was preparing to demonstrate why Earth had been such a violent world before they joined galactic civilization. The time for diplomacy and negotiation was over. The hegemony had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. They had awakened something in humanity that the galaxy was not prepared to face. The war that was coming would redefine what every species thought possible. The first strike came without warning across 300 star systems simultaneously at exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time. Every hegemony military installation in known space came under attack. The coordination required for such an operation shocked even the humans' allies who thought they understood human capabilities. Admiral Wan Taejun commanded the assault from his flagship positioned just outside the main hegemony stronghold. The massive space fortress had been considered impregnable by military experts across the galaxy. Its shields could withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets. Its weapons could destroy approaching ships before they got within striking range. The human attack began with weapons that the galaxy had never seen before, dimensional torpedoes that bypassed shields entirely by traveling through folded space. Energy beams that grew stronger the more they were deflected. Gravity bombs that turned a target's own mass against it. The hegemony fortress lasted exactly 17 minutes against the human assault. Its shields flickered and died as exotic particles disrupted the power grid. Its massive guns fell silent as gravitational weapons tore them from their mountings. The structure that had taken decades to build was reduced to scrap metal in less time than it took to eat breakfast. Similar scenes played out across hegemony space. Every military base, every weapons depot, every training facility was destroyed in the opening hours of the war. The Seven Species Alliance discovered that their entire military infrastructure was gone before they could even respond to the attack. Captain Kim Ji-won led the assault on the Hegemony Military Academy, where young warriors learned the art of conquest. The irony was not lost on the human forces. They were attacking a place where children learned to fight, just as the hegemony had attacked Earth where children learned to live in peace. The difference was that these alien youngsters were being trained to kill innocents, while Earth children had been learning to help others. The human captain felt no guilt as his ships reduced the academy to burning rubble. Some lines once crossed changed everything forever. The hegemony tried to surrender after losing their space-based military in the first 6 hours. Leader Vex broadcast messages offering peace talks and compensation for the orphanage attack. He promised that those responsible would be punished through proper legal channels. General Yun Sung-yi received the surrender offer while standing in the ruins of the orphanage main hall. She was holding the recovered artwork that Young Bin had painted showing all species living together in harmony. Her response was broadcast across the galaxy on all frequencies. She explained that surrender was no longer an option. The hegemony had declared total war when they targeted children. Now they would experience what total war actually meant. There would be no negotiations, no mercy, no chance for the attackers to escape the consequences of their actions. The human fleet moved from system to system, destroying everything connected to the hegemony. Military bases were vaporized, industrial centers were reduced to ash. Civilian populations were given exactly 1 hour to evacuate before their cities were leveled. Commander Oh Ji-yoon discovered something during the assault on the hegemony core worlds that made even hardened human soldiers sick with rage. Hidden prison camps where children from dozens of species were kept as slaves. These youngsters had been captured during previous hegemony conquests. The alien children were forced to work in weapons factories, building the very bombs that had killed their families. Some were used for medical experiments, others were trained as soldiers to fight against their own species. The hegemony had made targeting children a regular practice, not just a single act of terrorism. The discovery of the slave camps eliminated any remaining doubt about the righteousness of the human cause. Every species in the galaxy now understood that the hegemony had been systematically abusing children for decades. The orphanage attack was just the most visible example of their cruelty. Captain Lee Min-ho commanded the rescue operations at the prison camps. His teams found children who had been tortured and brainwashed and turned into weapons against their own kind. The human soldiers wept as they carried out youngsters who barely remembered their own names. The rescued children were immediately transported to new medical facilities that humans had built specifically for this purpose. Dr. Shin Yoo-jin led teams of doctors and therapists who worked around the clock to heal both physical and mental damage caused by years of hegemony abuse. The galaxy watched in amazement as human forces demonstrated military capabilities that no one had suspected. Weapons that could destroy planets, shields that could protect entire star systems, manufacturing capacity that could replace losses faster than they could be inflicted. The hegemony military leaders realized that they were facing an enemy unlike anything they had encountered before. These humans were not fighting for territory or resources or political advantage. They were fighting for total extermination of everyone who had participated in harming children. The 7 species tried different tactics to stop the human advance. The Krillians used their natural stealth abilities to launch surprise attacks. The Vorthic relied on their heavy armor to absorb damage. The Zephyrians tried hit-and-run tactics using their flight capabilities. Nothing worked against the human war machine. Every hegemony tactic was countered by weapons specifically designed to defeat that particular species. Human scientists had spent months studying alien biology not to heal but to find the most efficient methods of killing. The Krillian stealth technology was useless against human sensors that could detect heartbeats through solid metal. The Vorthic armor cracked like eggshells under weapons that generated pressure waves. Inside sealed spaces, the Zephyrian flyers fell from the sky as gravity weapons made flight impossible. As the war progressed, the galaxy began to understand that humans had been secretly preparing for total warfare. Since joining the Galactic Council, the peaceful exterior had hidden military research programs that made the most advanced species look primitive by comparison. The human industrial capacity seemed unlimited. Every destroyed ship was replaced by 3 new ones. Every lost weapon was improved and mass-produced. Entire planets were converted to military manufacturing in a matter of weeks. Colonel Park Jin-woo lead Ground forces on the hegemony homeworlds, his soldiers moved through cities that had been evacuated, destroying everything that could support future military operations. They were methodical and thorough, leaving nothing that could be used to rebuild. Hegemony tried to use their own civilians as human shields, hoping that humans would show mercy to non-combatants. They were wrong. Human forces had extensive intelligence about which civilians had supported the military which had participated in slave operations which had celebrated the orphanage attack. Those who had been involved in harming children were treated as combatants. Those who had opposed the military actions were evacuated to safety. Humans had spent months gathering intelligence about individual hegemony citizens. They knew exactly who deserved protection and who deserved punishment. Systematic destruction of hegemony civilization took exactly 18 months. Every military installation was destroyed, every government building was leveled, every industrial center was reduced to ash. The Seven Species Alliance ceased to exist as a political entity. The surviving hegemony civilians were scattered across the galaxy as refugees. Their leaders were either dead or in human custody awaiting trial for crimes against children. Their military no longer existed as an organized force. Their planets were occupied by human forces. In the end, the hegemony learned what humans had tried to teach through the orphanage. Some actions create consequences that cannot be avoided through surrender or negotiation. When you target children, you face opponents who will use every resource they possess to ensure you never threaten innocence again. The galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented. A species that seemed peaceful and gentle had demonstrated the capacity for total warfare on a scale that redefined what everyone thought possible. The humans had kept their promise to protect the children in their care. The hegemony no longer existed, but the cost of their destruction had shown every species in the galaxy that there were lines that should never be crossed. The humans had paid that price willingly and completely, ensuring that no one would ever again mistake their compassion for weakness. As human forces began withdrawing from former hegemony space, the galaxy prepared to deal with a species that had proven capable of eliminating entire civilizations when sufficiently provoked. The age of assuming that peaceful species were also harmless species was over forever. 2 years after the war ended, President Nam Chawan stood before the rebuilt orphanage that had risen from the ashes of the old facility. The new complex was 3 times larger than the original, and infinitely more beautiful crystal spires reached toward the sky, filled with children from across the galaxy playing and learning together. But this was not the same sanctuary that had existed before. The new orphanage was surrounded by the most advanced defense grid ever constructed. Human battle stations floated in orbit armed with weapons that could destroy entire invasion fleets. The message was clear to everyone in the galaxy. Behind the president stood children who represented the new reality. Some were survivors of the original attack. Others were refugees from the former hegemony worlds. Many were orphans whose parents had died in the war that humanity had fought to protect them. All young. Neri had grown up during the war years. She was now 15 and served as a translator for newly arrived children. She remembered her crystal siblings who had died protecting her and wore their memory like armor. She spoke 17 languages and could comfort frightened youngsters in their native tongues. Dr. Shin Yujin had replaced Dr. Li Minju as head of medical services, but her job was completely different now. The new facility treated not just sick children, but also those who had been damaged by war trauma. The human doctor had learned to heal minds as well as bodies. The medical center was equipped with technology that seemed like magic to most species: healing chambers that could regrow lost limbs, therapy devices that could repair psychological damage, treatment systems that worked on any known form of biology. The children received care that was better than most adults got on their home worlds. The memorial garden behind the orphanage honored everyone who had died in the attack. Stones from each victim's homeworld formed pathways between flowers that bloomed in every color imaginable. The names of 3,000 children and their human caretakers were carved in languages from across the galaxy. President Nam Chaiwan began her address to the reformed Galactic Council. The assembly hall was different now. Human representatives sat at a raised platform that overlooked the other species. The peaceful farmers and teachers had been replaced by military officers and weapons specialists. The Human President explained the new rules that would govern galactic civilization. Earth would continue to serve as a sanctuary for orphaned children, but now that sanctuary was protected by the most feared military force in known space, any threat to the children would be met with immediate and total retaliation. The Galactic Council had been restructured after the war. The old system of endless debates and diplomatic solutions had been replaced by something more direct. When humans said something was unacceptable, everyone now understood exactly what that meant. In practical terms, Admiral 1 Taejun commanded the defense fleet that surrounded Earth. His ships patrolled constantly, watching for any sign of threat. The Admiral had seen what happened when people targeted children. His forces were ready to demonstrate that lesson again if anyone was foolish enough to test them. The new facility housed over 10,000 children from 93 different worlds. The number had grown as more species brought their orphans to the only place in the galaxy where they were guaranteed absolute protection. The waiting list for admission was years-long. Teacher Park Minna led a class of mixed-species children through their daily lessons. The curriculum now included subjects that had never been taught before. The youngsters learned about the war that had been fought for them. They studied the consequences of targeting innocents. They understood that their safety came at a price. The children also learned about the humans who had given their lives to protect them. Commander Park Dae-ho, Kim Sora, Jang Hyeon, Dr. Liu Minju, and hundreds of others were remembered as heroes who had chosen to shield alien youngsters with their own bodies. In the engineering section, teenage refugees from former hegemony worlds worked alongside human students. They were building toys and games for the younger children, but they were also learning about the weapons that had destroyed their former masters. The irony was not lost on anyone. Commander Oh Ji-yoon supervised the integration programs for former hegemony civilians. Many of them had been children themselves when their governments decided to attack the orphanage. Now they were adults trying to build new lives under human protection. The humans had made it clear that the sins of the hegemony leadership would not be visited on innocent civilians, but everyone understood that this mercy came with conditions. Any species that threatened children would face the same fate as the 7 who had started the war. The galactic economy had been completely restructured around the new reality. Trade routes were protected by human patrol ships. Pirates and raiders had disappeared almost overnight when they realized that attacking civilian vessels might bring human retaliation. Other species brought gifts to the orphanage as a way of showing respect and avoiding human anger. Toys from distant worlds, food that could nourish any type of biology, books and games, and art supplies arrived daily from civilizations that wanted to stay on humanity's good side. The facility had become a center of scientific research as well as childcare. Dr. Shin and her teams had made breakthrough discoveries about alien biology that benefited species across the galaxy. Medical techniques developed to help war orphans were shared freely with anyone who asked. Captain Lee Min-ho commanded the rescue operations that continued across the galaxy. Human ships searched former slave camps and hidden prisons looking for children who had been missed during the war. Every recovered youngster was brought to Earth for treatment and care. The older children who had grown up in the facility during the war years were different from previous generations. They had seen what humans would do to protect them. They understood that their safety was purchased with the complete destruction of those who threatened them. Some of the teenage survivors chose to join the human military when they came of age. They wanted to help protect the next generation of children. Others became doctors, teachers, and caretakers, continuing the work of those who had died for them. The galaxy had learned to live with the new reality that human compassion and human violence were two sides of the same coin. The species that would die to protect alien children would also kill anyone who threatened them. The lesson had been taught thoroughly and completely. Ambassador Keth of the Centauri Alliance visited the Memorial Garden every year on the anniversary of the attack. He represented dozens of species who had initially opposed the human war against the hegemony. Now they understood that sometimes total destruction was the only appropriate response. The Galactic Council still met to discuss trade disputes and territorial boundaries, but everyone knew that real power rested with the species that had demonstrated willingness to eliminate entire civilizations when their moral lines were crossed. New laws were passed with unprecedented speed any military action against civilian targets, especially those involving children, would result in immediate human intervention. The galaxy had seen what that intervention looked like, and no one wanted to experience it firsthand. The orphanage had schools, workshops, medical centers, recreation areas, and research facilities. Everything a growing child could need was provided by humans who remembered their friends who had died in the flames. The quality of care was beyond anything most species provided for their own offspring. As President Nam Chae-won concluded her address, she gestured toward the children playing in the gardens behind her. They represented 47 species from across the galaxy living together under human protection. Their laughter echoed through halls where silence had once reigned. The galaxy had learned that there were consequences for certain actions that went beyond anything civilized species had previously imagined. The humans had demonstrated that some emotions, when awakened, could reshape entire civilizations through the simple act of refusing to accept the unacceptable. Earth had become more than just an orphanage. It had become a symbol of what happened when you threatened the things that humans held sacred. The children played safely in their gardens, protected by weapons that could destroy star systems and by people who had proven they would use them. The new order was simple and clear. Children were off limits to everyone, always, forever. The species that had learned to care for any orphaned youngster had also learned to eliminate anyone who threatened them. The galaxy was learning to live with both halves of human nature. In the end, the attack on the orphanage had achieved the opposite of what the hegemony intended. Instead of proving that compassion was weakness, it had demonstrated that sometimes the most caring people were also the most dangerous when pushed beyond their limits. The memorial garden grew larger each year as more stones were added from the homeworlds of children who found safety on Earth. The names carved in alien languages reminded everyone that some prices were worth paying and some lines should never be crossed.